Hey YouTube! So here is my labor and delivery story as promised. Today I am actually 1 week postpartum. I'm going to do a separate video on my postpartum recovery, but I wanted to go ahead and get my labor and delivery story done while it's still somewhat fresh in my mind before I forget anything. So last Tuesday I did castor oil, which was September 24th. I did castor oil. I pumped my breasts like the midwives had told me because I was 40 weeks and 3 days at that point. And nothing really happened. Well, that night before I went to bed, I started having contractions. They were like 4 minutes apart. And we got up and I got on my birth ball and my contraction stopped. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, I can't keep doing this like constantly. When I lay down, my contractions are worse. When I get up and get on the birth ball, they stop. So I sent a screenshot to my doula at, I want to say it was about 11:30 that night, saying, hey, this is what's going on. It was a screenshot of my contraction app that I had that I was using to time my contractions. And I said, I don't really know what's going on, so maybe, I don't know, I'm just going to go to bed and see what happens. So I laid down and tried to go to sleep. I still had my TV on, and I kind of was tossing and turning and tossing and turning, and it wasn't, I just couldn't get to sleep. I was having like these really bad low-lying cramps, like really low. They didn't really feel like a contraction. I could feel that my stomach was tight, but like all the other contraction I had been having, I could like feel that gradual squeezing of my uterus. So finally, I tried to get some sleep, but I really didn't. It was like intermittent sleep. So I got up and, well, no, I'm sorry. I didn't get up. I grabbed my phone and I looked at my phone and it was 2:25 in the morning. So I'm like, okay. I laid there and I said, let me just time these pains to see what's going on. Well, they were coming 4 minutes apart. Standard for what's been going on, but they felt different. They just hurt. Like more, they were really seriously more menstrual crampy than squeezing. So I called my doula at 2:45 and I said, hey, I don't really know what's going on. I'm having pains and we'll see what's happening. So she said, okay, give me 20 minutes. I'm going to take a shower and I'll be right over. Well, I got up and I woke up Brian and I'm like, hey, go ahead and get up. I really think this is it. Now, at this point in time, it's now 2:45 Wednesday morning. And he got up and I was kind of swaying through them when I stood up. They did hurt a little more and there was more pressure, I guess. So I got up and I walked into the bathroom. And as soon as I got into my bathroom, I felt like that air bubble, like popping sensation in my vagina, and I looked down and I was dripping water all over my bathroom floor. So at that point I'm like, holy crap, it's go time. My water just broke. And for me, on a typical prior to Carter labor, my babies come within an hour after my water breaks, and it's usually fast, and we at that point freaked. But I called my doula back and I'm like, yeah, it's definitely go time. My water just broke. So she like comes over and we're rushing. Brian's like, can I take a shower? I'm like, you better take a fast shower because we gotta go. And he jumps in the shower. My photographer shows up. We all get in my van. I call my mom. I call my mother-in-law. My mom's meeting us on the side of the road. My mother-in-law's here picking up my kids. And we leave. So we get to the birth center. It's a little after, I want to say 4 at that point when we got to the birth center. And she checked me and said I was 3 to 4 centimeters. Still, I'd been 3 to 4. So I was kind of a little bit bummed, but at the same time I was like, it doesn't really matter. My water's broke. I know he's coming. That's fine. So we are kind of laboring and I'm walking and I'm staying up and I'm laying down, and they gave me labor tincture, which is a black and blue cohosh tincture. It's different than just like taking the homeopathic. It's more potent. You have to put it underneath your tongue and it tastes like Grey Goose alcohol. Oh, it's so gross. It was so gross, but whatever, it works. So they checked me again a few hours later. I was still 3 to 4 centimeters. So at that point they said, why don't you go get some breakfast, walk around, like go to the mall, because the mall was only about 10 or 15 minutes away from the birth center, which was also right in front of the hospital if I needed to do that. And I said, okay, that's fine. So we went to walk around the mall. Well, while I was at the mall, they called me and said, hey, since you left, we had like this big, huge labor explosion. We have like 5 women upstairs, not enough rooms. When you come back, go downstairs to the midwives and let them check you, and we'll go from there. So I was a little bit bummed. I started thinking, oh my gosh, they're going to send me home. Because with midwives, if your water breaks, it's not like a hospital. They don't really put you on a time limit, but they monitor you. They do non-stress tests. You have to check for a fever. They won't really check you that much. They tell you, you know, don't put anything in your vagina. Don't take any baths. That way you don't introduce an infection. But you can go longer with your water broke. Plus, I was group B strep negative, so it really wasn't a big deal for me to have my water broke for an extended amount of time, as long as I wasn't having any infections or baby wasn't showing any distress, which he wasn't, and he never did. So I was kind of panicked, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you're going to send me home. Well, I get back, I go in, they check me. I'm still 3 to 4. His head was still really high. They said he had a 4 bag of water in front of his head, which was stopping him from dropping. So that was really frustrating. So she decided at that point she would go ahead and strip my membranes, which was fine. So she did. God, that really hurts. Like that is so brutal to have your membranes stripped. So she stripped my membranes, and as soon as she stripped them, I popped open 4 to 5. So she said, you know what, there's a really nice park a couple miles down the road. Why don't you guys go walk the park and see what happens? Plus it'll give the ladies upstairs, the ones who had their babies, time to adjust and go home, clean the room, and the ladies that are here to deliver. Because I think they had like 5 women in active labor. They had a woman in the hallway, a lady in the conference room, all 3 rooms were taken. It was crazy town up there. Crazy town. So they, I was like, okay, so they did the stress test, and of course, baby was fine, mom was fine. I left and we went and walked the park for, I want to say it was about 2 hours. And at this point, it's now past lunchtime. And from walking, my contractions picked up and they were going about 3 minutes apart, lasting about a minute. So we get back to the birth center and all the rooms are taken. There's nowhere for me to go. I'm just kind of walking around. I walked outside with my husband for a minute, and they asked me to walk the hill. There's, across the street from the birth center is a, I don't want to offend anybody, but I don't know what other religion uses shalom as a saying besides like a Jewish temple, but it's like a churchy temple. It's called the Shalom Temple. It was across the street, and the road was straight up. So I was walking the hill straight up and down for, I think we did it 4 times, and then finally I was like, I can't do it anymore. And we came back to the birth center, but of course the driveway to the birth center is another hill. You have to go up and around to the back to get to the actual birthing part of the birth center. So I'm like, I get back, and I don't know what happened, but my contractions hit like this, and they were like, oh my gosh, I don't want to say, going off of what I had at the end, that they were painful, but they were not fun, I guess. And when we got back, before we could even get inside, like I turned to my husband and I grabbed a hold of him, and I was having another contraction, and all I could do was moan through it and kind of rock, and I'm like, okay, like, oh, these hurt, you know. It was definitely a different contraction. And they ended up putting me in the conference room because I didn't have anywhere else to go, and I literally was on all 4s on a chair with my head down in the conference room, like rocking my hips and like moaning through the contractions. They hurt so bad. And let me just tell you, I'm normally, again, outside of my labors with my son, with Carter, he's a total different guy. I'm not a loud birther. Typically, I was more of a quiet, calm, in through my nose, out through my mouth, breathing type, but this labor was completely overtaking me. So they put me in a room, and she checked me and told me I was 5 to 6 centimeters. So I was like, yes, I'm making progress, but baby's head was still high. Still had a 4 bag. They couldn't break my water. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I labored like that, hard and active, for, oh my gosh, I don't even know. The timelines were crazy. This is now going into like Wednesday night. And I'm pushing close to that 24-hour mark. Granted, I had not had any sleep since Monday night and then Tuesday morning. I had little nappies, and that was about it. I didn't have any, I didn't have anything, like good sleep. So I they were worried about my exhaustion level. So I was in the bath, I was on the birth ball, I was in the tub, on the birth ball, in the tub, on the birth ball. Like I was going back and forth between the two. And he's sleeping in the chair beside me. So they came in and it was late. I want to say it was like 10 or 11, and they wanted me to do castor oil and more labor tincture. Well, they had been wanting me to do castor oil all along, but for them, like their idea of castor oil and my idea of castor oil were two totally different things. When I did castor oil at home, I was only using 2 teaspoons of castor oil. And then, like I did 1 teaspoon, waited 2 hours, did 2 teaspoons, and then I kind of stopped at that because, you know, I didn't want to dehydrate myself. I wasn't in a hospital where I could where I'm hooked up to an IV, and I didn't really want to necessarily have to have an IV, but we'll get there in a minute. But they came in and they were like, you know what, you've been laboring way too long, way too hard, you're exhausted, we've got to figure something out. At this point, we've exhausted all of our birth center options. We really think we need to transfer you to the hospital. And the second those words came out of their mouth, I got very defensive and a little angry because I didn't want to go to a hospital. If I wanted a hospital birth, I would have gone to the hospital to have a hospital birth. And I didn't feel it was necessary. I guess I felt like people were making judgment calls for me about how I felt without actually asking me how I felt. And yes, granted, maybe I was tired and maybe I couldn't make a decision for myself like that. But at the same time, I don't know. I guess I wasn't feeling the exhaustion level. I'll get to that too in a minute. So I started crying, and just like that, I turned my labor off. Like, I mean, just like that. It was done. I had not one contraction. I'm sitting on the bed. I'm crying, like sobbing hysterically, begging them not to send me to the hospital. They checked his heart rate again. He had never once even had a single decel. Not one time. He had like the perfect heart rhythm the entire time. And I'm like, well, if he's not in distress and I'm not in distress, I don't really feel like going to the hospital is a big deal. So she said, well, let me check you again and see if I can break your water, and we got to figure something out. So while she was checking me, she asked me to push. She said, can you give me a push? And I said, okay. So I pushed, and she said, she's like, okay. She left the room, and then she comes back and she was like, look, she was like, all seriousness, I really think that we need to send you to the hospital. Oh, sorry. My kids just came back from their homeschool scavenger hunt and the dog's barking. So she said, when you gave me that push, his head didn't budge. She said, what I think is happening here is that your pelvic muscles are so tense and so tight because something's bothering you and you're not really sure what it is, but something psychologically is blocking your labor. She had said that my pelvic muscles were so tight that it wasn't allowing him to drop, and what they wanted was for me to go to the hospital, get an epidural, get some sleep, and that I would probably wake up complete and ready to push. Well, again, I didn't want an epidural, so I was like crying even more. I'm like, I don't want an epidural. And my doula starts praying, and she's like, God, please give her the answers to what she needs so that she can have the birth that she wants. And you know, I looked at my midwife and I'm like, why did my labor just stop? I've been laboring for hours and now my labor is completely stopped. And she said it was because us as mammals, we're instinctive creatures. And because I now was made to feel unsafe, I turned my labor off. Which is like women, you know, you hear about women who give birth on the side of the road. But that's very rare. It usually happens like as soon as they get to the hospital, like babies are born at the emergency room doors, or as soon as they walk into labor and delivery. It's because at that point they feel safe and they're able to release. Now, not always the case. A lot of times women do give birth on the side of the road. We actually just had one last week. I saw on the news the other day of a lady who gave birth on the side of the road. So it was just instinctive. I turned it off, and you know, my doula's praying and I'm sitting there and I'm like, wait a second. Okay, when I came in here in one of my prodromal labors, in order to stop my prodromal just so that I could get some sleep because I had been laboring for 16 hours, nothing was doing anything, they wanted me to rest. I said, you gave me a shot in my butt of Stadol. And she said, yes. And I said, so you have Stadol here? And she said, yes. And I said, and you can give me an IV, correct? She said, yes. And Sorry, can you go get Dexter? He's down there barking.
Yeah. We found butterflies and caterpillars.
You did you take pictures?
Yeah.
Okay, good job. Okay, let me, so they, sorry about that. It's gonna be fun trying to edit this. So anyway, I said, well, can you give me one more chance to make this work? Can you give me an IV of Stadol and let me sleep and see what happens? And, you know, because I have been stalled in a hospital labor before with my first. I was stalled at 3. They gave me Stadol. I got an hour worth of napping and I woke up 5 centimeters. So I said, maybe if you want me to get an epidural because you want me to relax, well, maybe the Stadol will relax me enough that I can get him out. So she said, okay, that's fine, we can try that. And I said, if this does not work and his head still doesn't budge, because at that point they were thinking he was lodged sideways, and you can't come down sideways. So they were just thinking he was in a really bad position as well. So they hooked me up to an IV, gave me some Stadol, and I don't remember much of anything. I had my music playing, all the lights were out. I think I slept for about 3 hours because I had turned my labor off. I wasn't having any contractions. So I laid there and I slept, and my husband was sleeping beside me because, you know, you're in a birth center. They have big beds. They don't have little hospital beds. They have like big king and queen size beds. So my husband's laying next to me. He starts snoring and I yell at him. I'm like, why are you snoring? I need to sleep. They want me to sleep so I can have this baby. You cannot be sitting here snoring. And he was like, oh, sorry, I'm sorry. Well, then I fall back asleep. He falls back asleep. And then I start feeling the bed shaking, like shaking. And I'm like, you know, I know I'm high as a kite right now, but why is the bed shaking? And it's shaking and it's shaking. And then all of a sudden, Brian jumps out of the bed like he's covered in fire ants. And he's like scratching and he's doing this and he's rubbing his feet and he's like just going. And I'm like, what is the matter with you? And he was like, I don't know. I can't stop itching. Oh my God. I don't know what's going on. Oh my God, this is so bad. And he's like literally looks like a meth addict. He was like, like all spastic. And I, again, high as a kite, exhausted. I'm like, go get in the shower. Go take a shower. Why are you scratching? I need sleep. You know, I'm stressing because I don't want to have to go to the hospital. And my poor husband, oh my God, I feel like the world's worst wife. But I was high in my defense. It was very high. It was very high. So then, you know, he leaves and I didn't know where he went. Come to find out, when he went into the bathroom to take a shower, he realized his entire body was covered in hives. So you don't know if it was like the oils that my doula was using or what, but he had an allergic reaction to something. He was like covered head to toe in hives. So there's a 24-hour Safeway right down the street, which is a grocery store, and he went there to get Benadryl. So he got his Benadryl, and of course, you know, you've been up for now over 24 hours, and you take Benadryl, it makes you really, really sleepy. But while I was laying there and I was on the Stadol, I guess because it relaxed me so much, I kept waking up going, I don't think I'm breathing. And then I would go, no, I'm breathing. And then I'd go back to sleep. And then I'd wake up and I'd go, I don't think I'm breathing. And then I'd go, and I kept doing this like over and over and over again. And apparently I kept asking everybody to plug in my phone. And everybody said, you know, her and that stupid phone, because I'm very addicted to my phone. But it was more, I was so scared my music was going to turn off. I had a beautiful labor playlist, and everybody actually complimented me on my labor playlist because it was very soothing music. And I think I was worried my phone was going to die because it was also now like the middle of the night. So finally I get up at like 3 o'clock and I'm more awake, and they check me, and at that point my family decides they're going to go ahead and leave. Just because we still didn't know if I was going to go to the hospital. It was getting late. Everybody had been up for over 24 hours. My kids were there. It was too much. So everybody left, and they came in about 4 o'clock. And the other thing, while I was laying there high on Stadol, again, I feel like it was divine intervention, and God was really talking to me when I was high as a kite. But really, I do firmly believe that it was God. God led me to the Stadol. And then as I was laying there, God said to me, now Shannon, when they asked you to push, you did not push in your bottom. You pushed in your face and in your chin, but you did not push in your bottom. So next time they check you, ask them to push again and make sure you push in your bottom. And it all made sense. I just think that when they asked me to push, I put my chin down and I just kind of went, but I pushed more like in the top of my abdomen and not in my bottom. So when the midwife came in, she said she was going to check me and try to break my water. And I told her, I said, you know, when I was laying here, it came to me that I don't think I pushed in my bottom when you asked me to push. So can I push again and see if his head moves? And she said, yeah, go right ahead. And she said, hold on, let me get into position. And she checked me. She said, you're still 5 to 6. And she said, go ahead and give me a push. And that time I made sure that I stayed focused and I pushed in my bottom. And she said, that's good, that's great, stop. And then she grabbed the little hook and she said, and popped my water, and water went everywhere. And she said it was perfectly clear fluid. They checked his heart rate, he was great. She was like, now we can get things going. And at this point now it's 4 o'clock in the morning. So I'm like, okay, 4 o'clock Thursday morning. So I'm like, okay, I wanted to lay down and go to sleep, but I was so scared that if I went to sleep, because I still wasn't having any contractions, that they were going to stop my labor and or tell me I had to go to the hospital. So I stayed up, got on the birth ball, kind of rocked, and it was miserable. It was miserable. Like, I was scared to death. And then I don't even know at what point my contractions started up again, but I wanted to get back in the tub. So I got back in the tub, and I always forget this part when I tell people this. I did do their castor oil later that night and their labor tincture, again, combined. Even though against my better judgment, I did it because my thing was I didn't want to have diarrhea if I want a water birth. And they kept saying, oh, you know, it's not a big deal. And I'm like, no, it is a big deal. I really don't want to have diarrhea because I've been eating all day and have a water birth. I don't want to give birth to my kid in a tub of diarrhea. So I did the castor oil, and sure enough, I was in the tub, and I was laboring hard, and I just was uncomfortable, and all of a sudden, I have diarrhea all in the tub. It was clear, like castor oil diarrhea, but still, it was disgusting, and I was so upset, and my doula and my husband, God love them, got me out, sprayed me off, because they have a shower hose, like, adapter on the side of the Whirlpool tub, and get me in the bathroom because the jacuzzi tub was separate from the actual bathroom. So they go and they get me in the bathroom, and I'm sitting on the toilet. My contractions are unbelievably painful. I have diarrhea and I'm puking. Like, I'm just steady puking. And then I'm transition shaking. This is consistent for me for transition. My transitions are always ugly. Now, I've never had diarrhea before, but I've also never done castor oil like that before, because it was like 2 ounces of castor oil, and I had to take it straight and chase it with apple juice. So while I'm sitting on the toilet, having diarrhea, puking into this Emerson basin, and feeling like I'm about to die, Brian and Nicole, my doula, are like spraying out the tub, cleaning it all. It was awful, cleaning it all out. So then I get back in the tub after they clean it all out, and they put a towel down for me to kneel on, and the towel put suds off into the water. So we had the jets on. And then the midwife comes in and she's like, we can't deliver a baby in a bubble bath. Like, what did you guys put in here? And they were like, nothing, a towel. They were like, no, you can't put the towels in. The Whirlpool jets bring out this leftover soap residue in the towel. So then they had to drain the tub again. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. So they take the towel out. I'm laying flat on my back. I'm having contractions. And it was at that point that I started more so losing control. That was when my exhaustion hit. And I was so tired that I physically could not fight the pain. Like, again, like I said, I'm not a loud birther, but I was very loud this time. And I was doing the crying, and I can't do this, and it hurts so bad, and oh my God, the pain, I can't do this, I should have gone to the hospital, I should have gotten an epidural, you know, all of those crazy thoughts. Like, in my head, I literally thought to myself, I completely just screwed up. I should have been at the hospital numb from the waist down hours ago. Like, it was the most ridiculous thing to think, but at the same time, I was in so much excruciating pain, I couldn't cope at all. I just cried and yelled and screamed, and God bless my doula and my husband, because they just kept saying, I kept saying, I can't do this, I can't do this, oh my God, it hurts so bad, I can't do this, I can't do this, and they kept saying, you are doing this, you are, so just calm down, take a deep breath, get it together. You are doing this and it's happening. And my doula said, you know, she was like, Shannon, seriously, this always only happens when you're transitioning. And she said, you're going to meet your baby really soon. And I'm like, no, he's never coming out. His head's probably stuck again. He's never coming out. And they were like, he's coming out. You're fine. So then all of a sudden I got that overwhelming urge to want to push with the contractions just a little bit. I always refer to it as pee pushing. You're not like having a full out bowel movement, but you're like pee pushing. And thank God I cleared my bowels when I was on the toilet because I did not have any more poop incidences while in the tub. Thank God. So they got up, or the midwife came in and she checked me and she said I was 8 to 9. And I'm like, oh my God, I cannot wait another centimeter. I just can't do it. And they, she asked me to get up on my knees. So I got up. So I was like up on my knees, kind of like in a, just sitting on my knees, but with my bottom back. I guess I was kind of sitting on my feet. Maybe. I can't remember. But I was on my knees. But I wasn't up. I was kind of down in the water. And I was sitting there, and all of a sudden I was like, I have to push. And they were like, you can't. You have a small lip of cervix left on the front. Apparently she felt that on the front rim of my cervix in front of, on his head was a small lip. I guess that was what was stopping me from being 10. So she was like, we have to wait for that lip to move. And I'm like, I have to push. I can't do it. And they were telling me to lift my head because I kept dropping my chin. To lift my head and blow. I couldn't do it. I have all this on video, so you'll see it. And I tried blowing, but I was still pushing, and the midwife comes in and she has me lay backwards to check me. And while I was having a contraction and I'm crying and begging them not to touch me, she like flipped the lip off of my cervix, which allowed him to come all the way down and fully dilated me to 10. So they turned me sideways in the tub. So instead of laying long ways, I was sitting sideways and I had my feet firmly pressed against the side of the tub. And I had some ineffective pushing because I was screaming. And more so grunting and screaming than I was like full out pushing. As soon as I got it together and got my focus in my bottom and started pushing, I think I pushed 2-3 times maybe. The whole pushing process was maybe 15 minutes. And I felt that ring of fire burn when he was in the tub, and I just bared down because I was like, I know that ring of fire means he's crowning and I'm just pushing through. And then I heard the midwife said, okay, Shannon, stop, slow, slow. And it was funny because I don't know why, but I just kept repeating her. And I'm like, slow, slow, slow. And she was like, I need to check for a cord. And she ran her finger around underneath because his head was out. The cord was around his neck. Or she was running her finger around his neck. He had no cord at all. And then they... she said, go ahead and give me another really big push. So I said, okay. And I pushed one more really good time. And he came out. And they told me to reach down and grab my baby. But the way I was pushing, I had my hands down. And I was kind of leaning back a little bit. And like I was, so I couldn't, I felt like if I had let go, I would have like dropped down more on my bottom. So I didn't get a chance to actually pull him up like I wanted to. But the midwife did. She laid him right up on my chest. And it was the most amazing feeling I've ever had in my life to look and see that he was out. Like, he was out, finally. And we did delayed cord clamping, so they went ahead after he was born. They pulled the water and got me out of the tub. We had to kind of hold him a little awkward. It was a little weird, still having him attached. My cord was really short, so they had him, they helped lift me up, and that is on the video. And then the after part we didn't get on video, and it was because we didn't have anybody there at that point in time. It was just my husband, my doula, and my photographer, and she was doing her own thing. So I should have a professional video done of her footage too, but it'll be a little while. She got a lot of pictures and stuff she has to sort through because it was a long labor. So they got me to the bed, and I think it was about 10-15 minutes before I was able to deliver the placenta. We did do delayed cord clamping. I kept feeling the midwife kind of grab, I could feel her touch, not really me, but she was grabbing the cord, but I could feel the jiggling of the cord to wait for it to finish pulsating. And once it was done pulsating, Brian cut the cord, and they do mandatory, because baby was fine. He was crying and lifting his head, and his eyes were wide open, and he kept touching my face, which was like the most amazing thing ever. And he was fine. They had him on my chest. They do 2 hours of mandatory skin on skin, so that's what we did. We laid there for 2 hours, covered up under blankets. They pulled my bathing suit top off and laid him just right against my chest, and we stayed that way for 2 hours. And he was tongue-tied at birth, so we did have to get that snipped the next day, which was awful. Not really. He didn't seem to mind at all, but it was more psychologically for me. I didn't want anything on my son snipped, so the fact that, you know, they had to snip his tongue, I'm like, really? But he needed it. It was a full tongue tie. Like, the tip of his tongue was completely attached on the bottom. He couldn't put his tongue to the roof of his mouth if he wanted to, which also was affecting nursing. So he was born at 9:02 a.m. in the water, and he was 6 pounds, 14 ounces, 21 inches long, and he's absolutely perfect, and he is the best baby. And let me go ahead and he's sleeping, which is what he always does. Can you hand him to me, Shaylin?
Yay. Come here, buddy. Come here.
Okay. And here's my little peanut. There he is. My rainbow baby, my miracle after vasectomy reversal baby. So for those of you that are still trying, don't give up. Don't give up. It took 8 months. Let me go ahead and show you him. Here he is. Here's my little munchkin man. Here he is. Isn't he sweet? So little. So that's it. This is Carter Aaron Crush, born on Thursday morning at 9:02 a.m. September 26th. There you go. Thanks. Bye.